Hey everyone, Cruz here with the Pipe Podcast. Hey, listen, I was just talking with my friend Chris Stone and I said, sometimes life throws you curveballs, baby. Sometimes life throws you curveballs. Our guest that was supposed to show up this morning, not here yet. Not sure if they're going to make it, but this is what we're going to do. We're going to do something different because now, I already made a baseball analogy, so I'll make a football analogy just so I don't upset anybody out there, Chris. So we're going to punt, right? So
That's
today's, just off the cuff, all right, today's program is going to be based on how sales and movies and sitcoms, what we can learn like from some of that. We're going to make it fun today, okay? A little different, right? And I know at least Chris knows this about me. I'm a big movie guy, big sitcom guy. And I know Chris is as well. We've talked multiple times about different sitcoms and different stories and things of that nature. So if you don't know Chris Stone, he's my guest today on the Pipe Podcast. The Pipe, of course, we talk about sales process, sales initiatives, sales prospecting. Look at him, and sales experiences, right?
That's right.
And so we're going to connect that stuff. We're going to have some fun today. All right, let's just do it. Let's get this week started right. And let's do something a little different. All right.
Speaking of a little fun and a little different.
That's right.
Greetings from the Lord of Bancroft, Canada, Patrick Tinney.
Now, listen, Chris, I know you love doing this, all right, because I've known you for long enough, but just tell our viewers and our guests a little bit about your company, about Cast Ahead, what you do for us, and how you really made this whole thing, come to life for the Pipe Podcast.
Happy to, Crispin. My name is Chris Stone. I run a company called Cast Ahead, and we work with motivated entrepreneurs to do a show because, Crispin, most people, they want to know what goes on in the back end. They don't want to know what goes on behind the Wizard of Oz curtain there and pulling all the strings and all of the stuff. They just want a show, and that's what we do for them. I'm also a co-host on an Amazon show called Dealcasters.
Yeah.
And we go live in the biggest mall of the world and solve people's problems, and they end up buying stuff from us.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's so cool. I've caught a couple of those shows, and you guys are cooking. You guys are hustling on that show. I love it. I love it. Well,
it's fun, man. It's fun. Like today's show, if this weren't fun, man, we wouldn't do it.
No.
We'd stop. Just quit. Why do it if it isn't fun?
That's right. That's right. And how many times does life throw us, just something unexpected? And listen, you've got two choices, right? You've got two choices. You can either hang your head and, and just get upset about it and then just dwell on the fact of how it's impacting you in a negative way, or you can roll with it, man. You can roll with it, right?
Or you can say bad words.
Right.
All the bad words.
That's exactly right. Get it out of your system and then roll with it, right?
Right.
And so I'm sure that's happened with you, Chris. Like I'm sure that there have been times where, things don't work out exactly as planned. Mm-hmm. And I know you are a planner, like you on the DISC, and we talk about DISC a lot in the foundational training that Sales Arbiter provides. That's the foundation of everything we do is DISC. Right? DISC, if you're not familiar with it, right? And what we do is we try to gauge the behavior type of our prospect so then we can make a better connection with them. Okay? Because it's not about going into selling, you don't go into every event thinking to yourself, I got to make this sale. I got to make this sale. Right? You go into that event saying, I want to build a good connection with my prospect and try to understand if they have a compelling reason to buy my product or service now or in the very near future, right? And so that's the difference. And I know you're a strong C behavior type, Chris. I know that you are an analytical.
Am I on your couch right now? I feel like I'm being.
Listen, we've known each other long enough, right? That you're an analytical. You like things the way that you like them. You're very particular. You're very organized, right? And
you're using very nice words to explain things, but my wife has different adjectives for it.
Yeah. Yeah. You like the data, you like the information.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Absolutely. And then when it doesn't work, that gets you. Sometimes that gets you. So how do you manage that? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I processes, systems, right? And so, part of having these processes and systems is having things that are what happens if something breaks down in the system, right?
Right.
Case in point, we have a guest. Hopefully everything's okay with our guest. And if you came here to see our guest and he's not here, hopefully he shows up. But if he doesn't, we had plan B, right? Or plan C or plan D, whatever, however you want to do that. And you just need to have that. And sometimes the only way to do that is to go through it. Like you can plan all you want, but when the plan goes awry and you didn't have a plan B, you didn't have a plan C, you're saying more and more bad words. You just sometimes need to go through the reps and say, okay, this didn't happen. Let's peel it apart. How can this not happen again? Because if it happens again, that's on me.
Right.
Like, and so we keep on going to this situation. I'm thinking to myself, was there communication breakdown somewhere with our podcast guest service? Was there something that we could have done better? We're taking ownership. We're taking that responsibility. I'm not saying it's not our fault or someone else's fault. The fault can come later. It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is serving my client and making sure that this doesn't happen again if it's under my control.
Right. Right. And listen, what you've talked about, like accountability, right? And that's a big, big deal. Like that's really hard for most people to take accountability for their actions, something that they're doing that's incorrect, something they're doing that was wrong, and taking accountability for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that piece, for whatever reason, gets lost. It gets lost, in translation with people that just simply don't have the ability to step back and say, okay, what could I have done different? What could I have done differently? Right. And that's a big deal. Like people don't realize how many times you come to those, that pathway in life and you say to yourself, wow, at some point you have to make a decision. Am I going to be accountable for my actions so I can be better? So I can be better at whatever, being a husband, being better at, at building my business, better with my associates, right? Building a better culture. I mean, all those things make such a difference, but it all starts with what? That one person that takes accountability. And especially if you're in a leadership role, you run the organization. I mean, most C-level individuals that I work with, they're very accountable. They're strong D behavior types. They make, going back to the DISC, they're decisive, right? They make decisions quickly. They understand the consequences of those decisions. If it goes wrong, they take accountability for those decisions, right? But they want to find someone that they believe that can do the job, that can make, that will keep their promise. And price isn't always the biggest concern with a D behavior type, right? I mean, that's kind of the way that it is, those dominant behavior types, right? And we've seen those before too. Yeah. And so pivoting to what we had talked about, like some of the sitcoms and some of the movies, like think about some of the dominant behavior types in those movies that we've seen, right? It's funny. One of my favorite sales movies, Glengarry Glen Ross.
God,
like if you want to practice DISC, right? DISC, DISC, look it up. I want to practice DISC. Watch that movie, get a pad of paper, and just go through each and every character in that movie and make a determination of what DISC behavior they are. Because every single one is different. And it's interesting. Like, it is interesting. I did a program on that one time, and it was so fun. The sales team loved it. Now I had to get them to okay. I had to get the corporation to okay for the bad language, of course.
There's a few bad words.
But it was so fun because we went through and we said, okay, what behavior type is, the lead role? What behavior type is, this character? And we went through and asked questions, and it was really, really a fun, nice. Fun, time, a fun engagement. And yeah, that's right. That's right, Sean Gordon. Coffee is for closers, baby. Coffee is for closers. And if you haven't seen that opening scene with Alec Baldwin,
this is going to be great. We have these guys that are sales jammers, right? Patrick Tinney, Sean Gordon. It's like boom with the young Frankenstein here with Patrick Tinney as well. We got to get to that one, Brooker. But so back to Glengarry Glen Ross, which is, I mean, if there's a movie we've seen 10 times, for me, Star Wars, Raising Arizona, Young Frankenstein, 100%. Monty Python, The Holy Grail. I'm a big fan of like just these comedies, these classics. But Glengarry Glen Ross, geez. How many times do you think you've seen it, if you had to count?
100. I mean, I'm not even kidding you. Like, it's probably close to that. It's probably close to that. I would say 50 for sure, but I stopped counting probably after 20.
And there's just terrible, terrible sales techniques going on, but there's so much to learn, right? From the whole thing. So Baldwin, which type is he? Alec Baldwin? Yeah,
strong D behavior type.
Okay,
right. Strong D with a good amount of I, right? Because he doesn't mind being the center of attention, but very much a driver.
Yeah,
very decisive. Like doesn't mix words. Is basically just laying down the law, with that sales team, saying, here are the goals, here's where we need to go, right? And if you can do it, great. And if not, second place is steak knives, and third place,
fired.
Right? Right? First place, you win the car. Second place is a set of steak knives. Third place, you're fired. It's just
awesome.
That's just it. I mean, they sent him in because he's got that strong D behavior, and there needs to be change. Change needs to occur for that organization to move forward. This is somewhere along the line, it was decided that change needs to occur, right? And so that's one. That's just one aspect. Now, would I manage a team that way? Probably not.
No, probably not.
Right? Probably
not the greatest leadership quality.
Climate,
right?
Not in today's business climate.
True.
But then we, and I love some of the comments that are coming in. Wolf of Wall Street. Are you kidding me?
How about this one? Tommy Boy. Little guy. Big guy in a little suit.
I love it. I love it.
These are great
but they're
ones.
All, every single one of these we can learn lessons from, like Wall Street. If you're not following Charlie Sheen's progression in that movie, and you're not thinking about when is the tipping point when he realizes that the things that you're doing are actually impacting other people, and every single day, that you guys are out there, if you don't think you're impacting others within your inner circle, those that you love and you care about and your friends, maybe that second outer circle, and those are the people that you care about also, but you work with and that are your colleagues. And then those prospects that you're actually prospecting to, meeting for the first time, right? If you don't think that you're impacting those individuals in some way, you're crazy, man.
Yeah. Like
you've got to be, then go find a lifeguard job, right? There's still some lifeguard jobs out there.
Well, that's a noble gig, though.
Right, because this profession is probably not for you, right? If you can't handle, like we talked about earlier, the ebbs and flows of what happens in sales.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, Chris?
In you talking like you are now, you and Dan Jordan have this incredible way of taking virtually anything that happens and applying it to sales. Mm-hmm. It's, I don't know if it just came with the reps of every time Dan doing this and then saying, hey, I just saw somebody riding a tricycle and it's just like sales. And and it's like, God, that makes sense. Like, how did that do that? And you just now are talking about this. So in your mind, you're so wired to, when you can enjoy something, right? You can enjoy being with your family. You can enjoy doing whatever. But there becomes a moment in time where your brain just goes, that applies to this client that I have with this new client that I have, and they have this issue. I wonder if I can apply this to what I'm doing there. And I think a lot of people separate that. And there's really like that whole work-life balance thing. Personally, sure. I think is a bit of a myth, especially if you're a salesperson, right? You want to be a better person. That's going to help you be a better salesperson, right?
That's right.
So there's a lot of, the road's it's a little wide and gray in that world. So if you can just be a better person and go, hey, this happened in my life. I wonder if I can use this. How, in your opinion, like, are you just wired differently like that? When did that click for you to be able to apply just virtually anything to a sales situation?
I don't know. I blame it on my dad. I really do.
Okay.
I blame it on my dad. Like we talk about conditioning at a young age, and, he was just a serial entrepreneur, right? I mean, he always was hustling. He always had something cooking, like just always, and I mean, real estate license for 30 plus 40 years, in the restaurant business for 40 plus years. He would just, he would sell things like, Facebook Marketplace, like obviously that didn't exist when he was young, right? Right. But he would have a truck full of stuff and just sell it. And, because he just loved it so much. And
That's
then
amazing.
Being a serial entrepreneur, I mean, he would just pick up life lessons along the way, and he would, teach me and drive those into me, even at such a young age. And then on the other side of that, my mom was just such a operational guru. Like, and I may have talked about this on other podcasts before, but, she in the restaurant, like, you could ask her the price of a salt or one of those little salt or pepper packets.
Yeah.
And she would tell you exactly how much it was.
Each one.
And I'm not even telling you, like, it's 0.2, cents for one of those, I mean, she was just an operational, guru. And you're talking about a woman that didn't go past, an 8th grade education.
That's
right?
incredible.
My mom, right?
Yeah.
And my father, born and raised in the ghetto. Like, I will never forget that I'm one generation away from my mom's family being a migrant worker. One generation. Like Chris, they used to talk about as kids when they would go to certain farms to pick vegetables or fruit or whatever, they would say it was a really good farm if they had fresh hay to sleep in, because my grandmother would clean out the chicken coops, right? For all 9 kids to be able to sleep in the chicken coops.
That's incredible.
Right. And so I don't forget that. Like, I don't forget how my parents were self-made and they worked so hard to make life better for us. Like, that's a big deal to me. I don't want to go backward. I only want to go forward. And that's why I keep continuously, condition my children, right? Condition them to be better. Right. And going back to the movies, we've all seen those struggles, right? We've seen those struggles and characters that have not been from the best upbringing, have not had the best background, have not had the most opportunity in life. They haven't been silver spooned, right? But they figure out a way to get through it. They figure out a way, to have a better life. And I think that sometimes gets lost in translation, especially in today's society. Like, sometimes I think that success has become a bit of a swear word. And I'm like, how did that happen? Like, did someone change that definition? Because I haven't, but I've seen it and I've lived through it, and I'm 100% minority, and so that's also, but I've never seen that as a challenge. I've always seen that as an opportunity. like I think that I just think that there's ways that you can see, and do things in your life that can be different, and that you have to have that. I mean, maybe it's, and not breaking my arm to pat myself on the back, like maybe it's a little bit of an it factor that I can take any situation and say, there's probably some good in that, you know, or maybe I can apply that lesson to other businesses that I serve, or maybe I can apply that lesson to my family or help a friend, you know, through a rough time by applying that lesson and helping them to see it differently. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it absolutely does. It 100% answers the question for me. And I think when you have that attitude of gratitude, like Zig Ziglar talks about,
that's right.
When you wake up and say, you know, there's lots of people, no matter what, if they were successful and rich or whatever you're trying to do, or they really are worried about their next meal, they may not have woken up today. They may not have woken up at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Monday in the middle of June in 2023. And we did. Yeah. We get to help somebody today, and the content that we're creating today might help somebody after we're gone.
Yeah.
I mean, so when you think like that, when you think, hey, you know, like you do with your son and you do with the people around you, like, how can I take what my family instilled in me and try to instill it in them, even though they have more than I did, right? I mean, how many times, even in the midst of the migrant worker situation and all of that stuff, how many times did you hear your dad, well, you know, when I was young, we didn't have this, right?
Yeah, that's right.
How many times have you said it?
Right, that's
to
right.
your kids, right? How many, well, when I was young, you know, we didn't have Facebook Marketplace. We drove around with a trailer, you know, or whatever.
Right. That's right. Well, one of my favorite stories is when my father said, you know, he walked through we just built a new home, right? We're blessed. I say blessed because we are blessed to have built a new home. And I walk in and I say, wow, this is our house. Like it's still, I'm still amazed when I walk through the front door. And so my parents came for my middle daughter, her graduation. And my father walked through the home, and he said, you know, these are the homes when I grew up that I wasn't allowed into. Like, he had friends that were white, right? And he was from the other side of the tracks, but he made very good friends, you know, in school. And he would be invited over to play, but they would have to stay outside. Like, he wasn't invited in.
Wow.
And he said, and every once in a while, when I would have to go to the bathroom or something, and they would be gracious enough to let me, you know, use the bathroom that's towards the back of the home, you know, then he said that what I would do is, he goes, I would go in, and I was so amazed that they had running water, you know, that they had running water and that they had toilets that flush. Like, he was like, I was just so amazed by it. He's like, these are the homes that I was never allowed into as a child.
Wow.
Right? How far we've come. Far we've come. And then we pull that back to, you know, your question, which was, you know, how do we have those conversations? Well, I think part of that answer is you have to go through some transition in the way that you think. Like, I believe that, you know, as you experience life, and as you go through this transitional period, and as you learn, you know, what I call life lessons, right? Then those are the ones that you can imprint, you know, on your children in a way that will help them to be better, you know, that will help them to have a better understanding. They won't have the experience, but to have a better understanding of what has happened in the past. Right. And I think that's the piece that I try to do. Like, that's what I try to do with my children, because I can't expect that they're going to understand the experience of that. Like, right. But I can expect that they would have enough maybe compassion or understanding of the situation that they could learn from it.
Yeah, I think sometimes what I've learned being a father over the years is, okay, you get in that moment where it's like, oh, this is the time where I get to teach the wisdom of the ages to my son, right? Like here they go, they're getting ready to do something, and then you've got all of this, you've got all this stuff in your head that you want, that you can't just like regurgitate it out because they're just, so you have to find a nugget. Like you got to find something that they're going to, because I remember my dad's nuggets. I remember them clear. I remember my mom's nuggets.
Right.
And how, and you've shared some of the nuggets you have from your parents. And so like when my son went for his first job interview, I didn't go, okay, we're going to, and I said, in the interview, I want you to say these words. You don't have to say them exactly. You could say them in your own way, but you need to say, I want this job.
That's right.
You have to say that.
That's right.
You have to communicate that. Don't just piddle around it. Don't just dance around it. You are there to show this person that you want to work for them. You want this job.
Right.
Don't just show up and talk about yourself. Tell this person you want the job. That's it. And I walked away.
So good.
That's so it. Good. Because my dad told me that. And I got jobs from it. And then when I became a manager and I interviewed people and I sat down with somebody, I had these wonderful, talented people at Sony. And we've got a question here from Patrick Tinney, and I want to get to that.
Yeah, you got it.
And I interviewed these people. I was like, oh my gosh, these are rock stars. And I had like these executives are like, this is the gal, this is the girl, this is the guy, this is a whatever. And they came in, they were absolute rock stars. They didn't want the job.
Yeah.
I didn't even get a sense that they wanted the job.
Right.
I didn't hire them. And I'm glad I didn't hire them.
Yeah.
I want somebody that wants the job. I want somebody that wants to do the work. Give me 10 of those.
Yep.
I'll turn them into a rock star. Because that's my responsibility. I'm accountable for that. And so that's kind of my segue there for trying to get us back on track. But so Dr. Tinney here says when he was young, they didn't have indoor plumbing in Canada. So there's some perspective. You guys are
that's
you guys
right.
can appreciate the swirling porcelain.
Patrick Tinney and I have been connected for a long time, and there's lots of reasons why I think we're cut from the same mold. And he has the same idea and belief system in work ethic, and how if I could send a box of that to people, but that's just something that you can't manufacture. It just has to happen on your own.
Yeah, and those of you who don't know who Patrick Tinney is, just Google that man's name. Pick up one of those books, because once you do that, you'll pick up all four. It's just, I would tell you Unlocking Yes might be the one. Bonus Round was one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Just like the stories that guy has.
Oh man.
It's just incredible.
It is. He's a great guy. And I'm so glad you're on today, Patrick. Thank you.
So he wants to know how I moved from Sony music to podcasting.
Yeah. Tell that story.
So the music business you want to talk about ebb and flow, like we did earlier. That the bottom dropped out after the swoon of the 90s, where the only way you could get music was on a shiny plastic disc. And companies that I worked for and other people in the music business got real fat off of that. And then Napster hit, and everything just kind of unraveled from there, and iTunes kind of picked the music business back up, right? And said, now let's dust you off. But the music business got a lot lighter throughout that process.
Right.
And I pivoted into digital, away from physical. So I kept moving like a shark in that business. And because the business fell out so much, Patrick, I had to lay off. One of the hardest things I ever had to do was to sit in a conference room in Sony and lay off the entire branch. And I was the only one left. Actually, there was one other person that was left for Sony in Atlanta for the Southeast. It lay off the entire branch. Terrible day. And so I started working out of my house remotely when Zoom wasn't even a thing. it was Skype, and then when Zoom became a thing, it was like, wow, this is going to be awesome, right? And so, long story short, the business was still, to some degree, it's in New York, it's in LA, and it's Nashville. I'm based in Atlanta. Now, in Atlanta, you can be anywhere in 24 hours. Doesn't matter.
Right.
This is one of the beauties of living here. And so I was able to work remotely and call on big companies like Spotify, et cetera, from where I was in Atlanta. But this was pre-pandemic. And so it was still like, in WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get. You got to, you have to be in the backyard of the account base. You
right.
gotta, even though they don't care to see you all the time, these accounts, and we have this, right? We can communicate virtually.
Right.
And, but that company was not seeing it that way. And I was like, look, I'm going to have to figure out, I'm going to have to stitch my parachute because at some point this chair is going to get pulled out. And every time I was going to New York, they were giving me some new offer. Like, hey, we're going to call you Burgermeister and we're going to put a 0 behind your salary and double it. And we'll put a place, in the city, and you can come in on Monday night and then leave on Thursday night to be with your family on the weekends. And it was like all of this stuff. I was like, listen, I want to be a father and I want to be a husband, first and foremost. They don't care if I work anywhere. They just want me at their plays, at their ball games, supporting them, and of course, be there for my wife. And so I created this business because I was accountable to them, and I knew that was the right move to do that. And
That's great.
That's
great. And you came to a pivot point. I'm going to take it back to the original topic, right? Andy Dufresne, Shawshank Redemption, right? You got to get busy living or get busy dying, right?
Oh, I love it.
And that's the pivot point in that movie, Red, he doesn't know. He didn't know at that point if Andy was going to make it through the night. He thought that he may do something detrimental to himself. Like he thought he was going to put himself in harm's way, or maybe, he didn't know what was going to happen through that night. He said it was the longest night he's ever had, right? The longest night he's ever had in prison. And because of his friend, he was so worried. But Andy knew he had to make it. He had to make a choice, right? He had to make a choice, and you came up against that too. And again, so many applications for what happens in characters' lives. And the one thing that I'll draw it back to also, Chris, is a lot of sales, a lot of what we do in sales, you have to act ACT. You have to act the role, right? You have to act the role. A lot of people are not just natural born salespeople. And so what does that mean? That means they have to be able to tune their behavior type, their disc, to try and match and mirror the individual that they're engaging with. Right? And that's probably
how does that work? What does that look like for someone who, let's just say hypothetically, we're gonna I don't know, role play, I guess.
Sure.
It makes me a little bit nervous role playing with somebody like you, but I don't know what I'm getting myself into, Patrick Tinney.
It's okay.
But if I'm someone, clearly I'm extroverted, I'm not introverted. But if I talk to lots of introverts, and some have become very successful in selling.
Sure.
So does acting come into play if I'm someone who's introverted and, I know that I have to sell? Like, how do you work with someone who's in that sort of framework and that mindset in order to be like, they're just inside, they're just terrified?
Oh yeah. So part of that is working on the 6 inches between your ears and knowing that, listen, you're just playing a role. You're playing a role, and your role is salesperson, right? And so now when we define that piece, then we start to work with them on DISC. And we take them through a whole DISC program. We make sure that they understand what their behavior type is, because they have to know thyself before they can actually apply these tools to others, right? And so then once we start to unpack that piece to understand what the behavior type is of the actual salesperson. Now we start to fine tune that. Okay. And what I mean by fine tune is that then if you're engaging with the D behavior type and you're not typically in your everyday, normal base identity behavior, you're not a D behavior type. You're not a dominant, behavior type. Then you have to turn up your D, turn down your I, turn down your S, and turn down your C. I mean, I actually have, trained individuals to look at those as dials. They're like almost dials on like an old radio or, if you remember the old receivers, right? The volume, the tuning, the bass, the treble, right? And so look at those as dials. And when you're engaging with a high I, you have to keep your I kind of in the middle. You have to turn your D way up because the I behavior type is this person that will just talk about anything. They're the ones that could literally talk to a tree, right? And have a full blown conversation, right? And so you have to be careful with those because they'll go off track. They'll go everywhere, right? Yeah. So you have to turn up your D so you can be more dominant in that conversation. And so then you keep them on track, right? And so those are some tactics. S's, those are the steady relators. Those are the people that are very slow and steady. And you have to bring them along. I mean, even when I talk about a steady relator, I slow down my cadence. Yeah. I talk more quietly, right? Because if I come at them with a really strong I behavior type and they're an S, a steady relator, then I'm going to turn them off. They're not going to buy from me. They're not going to like me.
Yeah.
Those are the people that they're like, I don't like that guy. I'm going to find somebody that I connect with. Right. And they're going to feel, you're going to be just another pushy salesperson.
Yeah.
Right. And then those C behavior types like yourself. I mean, I have to also be careful to temper my I. I keep my D kind of in the middle. Right. I keep my S kind of low and then I turn up my C. So we're talking about process. We're talking about like analytics, like you're the type of person, Chris, that you want to know exactly how this is going to work, right?
Get excited about details.
Yeah, excited about details. So we talk about that. Like we make sure that we're covering all of, crossing every T and dotting every I with that individual.
Wow. Just hearing that makes me think about how does someone do that effortlessly and not come across like they're just this chameleon so like you start engaging with someone if you're introverted and you're like, okay, I'm dealing with an I person, so I have to dial this down, I have to do this and then they don't become a completely different person, right? Because if you do win the sale right. And then they do become even just a connection for you, right? Mm-hmm. They don't want to meet you somewhere and then you're not that person that they talk to that you made the sale with. You have to continue to be you, right?
That's right. That's
so
right.
How do you attenuate and do all these things within DISC yet still remain yourself or feel like you're yourself?
Yeah, I mean, listen, your what we call personality is still going to in some way shine through. But remember, what we're trying to do is really focus on building a connection with our prospect in a way that they're not used to. They're not used to having that kind of a connection with a potential prospect, with a potential salesperson. And that's really important. Like you're doing something different. I mean, I have helped companies, bill and make, millions of dollars because they've had conversations that sound like this, Chris, that sound like this with the prospect. Okay. The prospect says to the salesperson, your product is similar to your competitors. Your pricing is actually more or, at least in the range, but you're not less expensive. And I've looked at your company size is also kind of the same. But I got to tell you, we're going to move forward with your organization because there's just something different about you. There's just, I can't put my finger on it, but there's just something different about you. And I trust that you are going to be able to do the job. Right? And that difference maker is that connection that you're making with your prospect in that no one else is thinking that. Your competitors aren't going into the selling event saying, I've just got to make a really deep connection with this prospect and then make a determination on whether or not they're compelled to buy my product or service now or in the very near future. And if there's a fit between our two organizations, right?
Right.
I mean,
it's trusting the person over the brand, right? So like if, I'm not saying that Sales Arbiter isn't a brand, but I'm saying when someone thinks Sales Arbiter, they think you.
Yeah.
They don't think this, right? They don't say, oh, well, this company works with all of these other companies, so they must be somebody I should work with.
That's it.
They want to work with you.
Yeah.
You're the person. You're not just the face of your organization. You're somebody that they can talk to.
Yeah.
Because you did talk to them and you developed that trust. I love that how you laid that out, that differentiation. It's so lost, I think, for entrepreneurs. And you get caught in your head like, how am I ever going to be able to do this? There's other people that do the same thing.
That's right.
There's bigger companies that do the same thing I do.
That's right. But
you're you. And that's how you differentiate yourself. You don't have to compete on price.
Yep.
Absolutely don't.
Yep. Hey, Chris, this has been great. We're going to wind it down.
All right.
I appreciate, you jumping in, and really it was a great show. We had a lot of good comments, and thank you for those that stayed on and listened this morning. And I'm so appreciative that you came on today. And thank you, Sean Gordon. Thank you, Patrick. Thanks for all of your recommendations and your interest and your questions. And we'll see you again next week. I always close like this, Chris. You know how I close the show. Keep selling and have fun doing it. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.